Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Collecting Tracks. I'm Richard Hutchinson.
And I'm Andy Preston.
And we're your hosts for episode 12, Retro Collection.
You are listening to Fantha tracks.
He's waiting.
Classic Star Wars and the collectibles they gave us. From vintage Star Wars to the modern era of the saga. This is Collecting Tracks. Here are your hosts, Richard Hutchinson and Andy Preston.
What have you been up to since our last show?
Yeah, well, you say not that long, but of course we've had the summer in the way, haven't we? So lots gone on. Been away on holiday, that was the main one. Went to Calella, just up the coast from Barcelona in Spain. Very nice, very Spanish, by which I mean it's not full of British bars and things, which I quite like. So lots of beach, pool, swimming, snorkeling, cafes, bit of shopping, lovely. More recently, last weekend, went to Taunton Museum, that's Taunton, not Tauntaun, where they had a sci-fi day. They've got an exhibition at the moment of Doctor Who artwork. A lot of the old 70s art that appeared in comic books and on the Target novel covers and so on. A lot of the original paintings, which was fantastic to see. So they had a bit of a special sci-fi day. I went along with some friends down here, guys, that we do a bit of charity work. And we dressed up. I was Fourth Doctor. My daughter was Romana. And then Rose. We also had a couple of guys from the Milton Keynes Garrison, a couple of stormtroopers and a Predator. A friend of mine, Rich, was the Joker and also 10th Doctor and a Jedi. That was his other one. So lots going on, lots of characters. Had a really good chat with Chris Achilleos' wife. Chris, very, very well-known sci-fi artist, passed away a few years ago, but it was lovely to have a chat with his wife and just reminisce about some of Chris's work. So, enjoyed that. Lots going on, Rich. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So obviously I had the summer break. I think I was off for 7 weeks this year. I had a really, really good break. And we went to Morocco. I had a week in Morocco. It was 43 degrees just about every day, which was hot. But, you know, we managed it well. We were just sensible and we didn't really notice the heat being too bad. So that was great. But one of the best things about that holiday is obviously sometimes you're struggling for TV at times, you know, when you're just starting to settle down as your wife's in the bath and taking an eternity to get ready. So I started to watch the BBC The Tripods, which I haven't seen for, must be a good 10 years now since I've watched those 2 seasons. And I probably watched 6 or 7 episodes of season 1. And then, of course, I've come back to UK. The YouTube channels that these were on are all unavailable, so I haven't been able to finish off the first season, which was sad. I loved that. Do you remember watching The Tripods?
I do, long time ago. But yeah, that's a great shout to watch again. There must be cheap DVDs on eBay, aren't there? Have you had a look?
I haven't got a DVD player. Come on, Andy. I've got nothing now.
Well, you can get a cheap DVD player as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you waiting for?
Well, I'm hoping that these become available on BBC iPlayer or something, because, I mean, you might laugh, but I've been watching Prisoner Cell Block H on My 5, and I watched all of season 1, and I'm halfway through season 2, and...
Oh, God, you poor son. What did you do to deserve that?
Oh, I loved it. I do. I really like it. It's terrible, but it's so funny. It's gripping. But, yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know if you've read the 4 John Christopher novels of The Tripods. Did you read those?
No, I haven't.
No, the trilogy of the Tripods novels was brilliant. I mean, obviously, the BBC series ended at the end of season 2, and they never completed season 3. So, they wrapped up season 2 with, was it just all for nothing? And a lot of people said, well, yeah, basically we've invested a lot of time and energy watching this show. It has been all for nothing. So they never finished it properly, a bit like the old Lord of the Rings cartoon that never got finished. And then John Christopher wrote a prequel, I don't know, maybe about 10, 15 years after the original trilogy. And the prequel's a little bit babyish, but I think it's called Here Come the Tripods or something like that. But the actual 3 novels for being junior fiction are actually really good. So I'd certainly recommend those 3.
I'll have to look out for those. You know what? I never realised they were based on books.
Oh, absolutely. And it takes out I don't know if you remember the BBC series, but I think from memory the first season was about 13 episodes, and I think 2 or 3 of those episodes were really cringy. It was, exaggerated things that happened in France that deviated massively from the books. The books were actually really good. I would highly recommend those 4 books. You can get them in as paperbacks, but you can get them in a little box set, which was quite nice to have. I don't think I have my box set anymore, but I probably will pick up those actually to reread. I'd certainly recommend anybody, checking those books out if you're interested in a bit of science fiction, but it's something that's, quite light, a paperback holiday kind of book for me.
Sounds good.
So on top of that then, I've done a lot of bathroom remodelling. I have put a new shower in the bathroom, and I've done this once before, and I always said to myself, I will never put another shower in any property I will ever own. And then I started thinking, this bathroom needs a shower. Within about 2 days, I thought, I remember now why I said I would never ever put another one in, because anything that could go wrong did go wrong. There were beams in the wall that shouldn't have been there. There was pipework that was non-standard, which you often get in new build houses. And I was heading off down to the plumbers, and they were saying, it's one of those houses, isn't it, where you need reducers and extra T-pieces, and it just went on and on and on. But never mind, it's all done now. It's looking absolutely beautiful until the stepson flooded the bathroom, but never mind. That's what happens.
Well, Rich, you're a braver man than me, because I don't like messing with water or electricity, and you've got both of them in a shower, so... No, I'll call the pro in.
No electricity on this one. It's all linked to water pressure, so...
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't touch water and electricity together. Right then, so we decided to look at the retro collection. We're both vintage collectors. We loved the original Star Wars figures, but, many people really enjoy this retro collection. So I just thought it would be nice to go back and, just pull out some facts of the retro collection, share what we thought about them, and, pick out some key pieces from galacticfigures.com, which I think... I'm not sure if Jedi Business morphed into this or not, but I'm pretty sure this is one of Chris B's websites, but he started off on there. So in 2019, Hasbro unveiled the Star Wars Retro Collection in New York Toy Fair with 7 figures: Luke, Han, Leia, Chewbacca, Vader, Stormtrooper and Tarkin. And the Retro Collection features faithful reproductions of the original Kenner 3 3/4 inch figures from the late 70s to mid 80s with a used looking packaging and modern production markings. Okay then, Andy, so when these first came out, we first started to see the images, what were your initial thoughts?
I think initial thoughts among most in the vintage community were, blimey, are these going to get mistaken for the real thing? Are people going to be paying vintage prices for these modern retro figures and for the accessories, the blasters? I don't think the cards themselves would get mistaken, but there was a lot of concern. When they came out, when they hit the shops, people noticed fairly quickly that the figures had got modern trademark information, which sorted that one out. And the blasters, there are very subtle differences. So if you know what you're looking for, you can tell the difference. But anybody who's paying, 60, 70, 80 pounds for a Princess Leia blaster ought to be doing the homework first anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw, lots of posts on there saying, oh my God, Hasbro are releasing reproduction figures, which I think is a bit of, you can't really say that of the company that actually owns the original license. These are not reproduction figures. These are, a new figure line heavily based on the original line.
Yeah, I would agree. You can't call them reproductions because, as you say, it's the same company selling products that they sold, or in a different guise they sold back in the 70s and 80s. So reproductions, no, but in terms of a collectible, I guess it's got a legitimate place in the hobby, hasn't it? I don't think it's targeted at the likes of us, Rich. I think it's targeted at the casual fan, whether it be modern collectors who want to get a bit of vintage and can't afford the genuine prices, or whether it be your casual Star Wars fan, isn't really a collector, but sees these on the store shelf, thinks, oh, I had those when I was a kid, they're fantastic, and goes and starts collecting them. And for folks like that, absolutely, why not?
Or the vintage collector who thinks, sod that, I'm not paying those prices, never mind, can't afford them.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Now, with regards to the weapons, these are not as accurate as some of the reproductions we've seen. So it's not a case of you've got to, heavily scrutinise these, as sometimes you have to do with genuine retro weapons. These are, they are quite different. It is very much a 5-second, 10-second scan over, isn't it, with pics?
Yeah, I've not looked at them too closely myself, personally. Have I got any of the retro re-releases? I don't think I have.
What did you think of the criticism of the sticker, first of all? Because there were a lot of people criticising the sticker placement. A lot of people tried to remove the sticker. The sticker didn't really bother me.
Personally, don't like the sticker, but you can get them off. The way I've been doing it is with a hairdryer. Hairdryer set on very low, point it away from the bubble, and then very, very gradually with your thumb just peel the sticker back, and I found they come off really easily. If they do leave a little bit of glue residue, then a bit of rubbing alcohol, Goo Gone, I've heard, is a product that does very well to get rid of that. So, yeah, not too bad. I have seen other folks who ruin their cards by peeling the sticker off, I guess not being too gently about it and tearing the litho underneath. But, yeah, I think if it were printed on there, I would probably have more of a problem, because then you couldn't get rid of it. It is nice to take the sticker off. It is nice to see the full beauty of the card back underneath. Just a shame, perhaps, that they didn't use a less tacky sticker, and that would give you, that option much more easily.
Yeah, the only issue I had with the sticker, to be honest with you, was sometimes, and this happened in the vintage line as well, sometimes stickers were placed like over a character face or something like that. So certainly there's a Darth Vader that's done the rounds where there's a sticker slapped right over his face, and you can see his torso and a little bit of the helmet. But I think in the retro collection there are some of the figures that suffer from that as well.
I've not seen those. They seem to be fairly consistent in terms of sticker placement. As you say, a true vintage line, the stickers end up all over the place, because I guess it was done by some factory worker, and on a Friday afternoon they're probably not too bothered where the sticker goes, as long as it's on there somewhere. I always thought these were placed by a machine. I don't know whether they are or not. Perhaps it's more to do with the graphic on the card back and where the face of the character sits.
Oh yeah, the stickers are in the same position, but obviously because the characters move in some of the figures, the sticker does kind of overlap a bit, and I think that it would have been better if they could have moved the sticker on some of those card backs.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Now, what did irritate me about these cards was the fake weathering. I thought that was completely unneeded. And as somebody who likes things pristine, if I read a book and I've bent the cover, or I've left a mark on it, or I've got a comic, and the worst thing for me is when you open the comic and you get a bit of tape on the comic as you're trying to take it out of the bag, and you're carefully peeling the tape away to pray that it doesn't rip the comic. I often have to go and buy a new one to replace it, because it really irritates me. So the weathering I just did not like at all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I also like I like to have the collectibles as minty as I can get them. Doesn't always work out that way, but it does bug me. And to see that on the packaging, when it could be nice and pristine, yeah, it's a shame they went down that route. I suppose, again, from your casual collector's perspective, it's a good way to immediately, at first glance, tell the retro cards apart from the vintage ones. I mean, obviously there are very obvious other tells, and I suppose Kenner's design department, or Hasbro's design department, they're thinking, well, it's a retro figure. It's a nod back to those 70s, 80s figures, which are getting a bit tatty now. So, we'll make it look like a vintage line, like an old product. But yeah, could have done without it, really.
So to promote these, Hasbro released an envelope, and that went out to Star Wars media sites and some of these big sci-fi companies, and it was very reminiscent of the original early bird kit. And there wasn't a lot in here, where there was a sticker sheet, some different paperwork and artwork that was showing how the original figures were going to look. And then not long after that, the cardboard box, which was obviously heavily styled on the early bird kit, was released with 6 Star Wars figures. And now I thought that was really a good little nod. There's nothing about this whatsoever that could be mistaken for the vintage line. The cards have got 6 figures on the back. It's a box as opposed to the certificate, the early bird certificate. There was a sticker in there which had, the blue sticker with May the Force Be With You and C-3PO and R2-D2, which did at the bottom copyright 1977 20th Century Fox written on it, which was a bit of a surprise. But equally, they couldn't be mistaken for the original. It's a shame it wasn't stamped with, the correct date on it, but I really like that, and I like the fact that it came with the first 6 instead of the first 4, because they try to do something completely different. What were your thoughts on that kit box?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know about that sticker, actually. They fetch a pretty good price. I know trying to complete my early bird set, I must have paid about 50 quid for one. So, definitely one to look out for there. But as you say, the box itself and the 6 figures packed together is lovely. Reminiscent of some of the old Kenner 6-packs. More done in Canada, where they had the 6-packs, the larger figures packed together.
I know they had 7s and 12s and 15s, but I don't recall 6s, but you could be right.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I've seen, again, not sure on the number of figures, but I'm sure I've seen packaging quite similar to that with the racetrack and the Star Wars logo and that sort of silver and black edging. A nice little nod back again to the vintage line. They've obviously done the homework. They've taken some good inspiration from what's gone before and given it that modern twist.
Absolutely. And the first wave that they came out with, so we'll just have the first wave facing them. So what were your thoughts about that? Did they get it right? Did they get the correct figures? Did they absolutely nail that?
They did. You got a nice mix there. You've got the 6 figures come in 3 pairs, really, don't they?
Yeah.
So you've got Han and Chewie, they go together nicely. Luke and Leia go together. Stormtrooper and Darth Vader, a couple of bad guys for the goodies to fight. So, yeah, absolutely. I think they nailed it there. Of course, they did come out with another Star Wars 6-pack later on with the other 6. So, you could get all of the first 12. But, yeah, for that first release, I think that was ideal.
And then they really surprised everybody with Ty and Tarkin, which, for the likes of me and you and other similar characters, was the one figure that I think we were most looking forward to getting. So what was it they did with Tarkin, and did you think it was a good idea?
I thought it was a fantastic idea. What narked me was the fact that the other figures were all available individually, but to get Tarkin, you had to buy the re-release of the Escape from the Death Star board game, which I think was £20 in the UK or slightly more, compared to about, £8 or £10 for figures. They obviously knew what they were doing. They knew the figure that most of the vintage fans would want, and they made you pay a little bit extra for that. But the figure itself is fantastic. As you say, it's the one figure that we've been crying out for, since day one. Along with that, you could probably say characters like Biggs or Wedge or a Sand Trooper, or, of course, the Rebel Fleet Trooper. But Tarkin definitely on that list. They did a really good job with the sculpt. Some say he looks more like John McEnroe than Peter Cushing, but I think for a figure that's echoing the vintage line, the sculpt does just fine. Card was really nice. For me, the only problem was that it had the Kenner logo rather than Palitoy. I wish they'd done a Palitoy variant. I came up with a Palitoy sticker and customised mine, stuck it over the Kenner logo, but that's me.
Now, I thought the Tarkin idea was absolutely brilliant, and I loved the figure, but again, like with you, I didn't like the fact it was tied with the board game, because even when the board game came out at the time, it's a very poor game. There's not a lot of playability in it, and the problem with the board game is, of course, it's displaying it, and it's having it there, and you just buy the Tarkin and toss the board game away. So what I actually did was I actually sent off the thing via eBay to somewhere in China, and I actually got my Tarkin like that, and it worked out cheaper than actually buying the board game as well to get the Tarkin figure. So there must have been workers in the Chinese factories who were taking these Tarkins out, because obviously they were aware that people were wanting them, not packaging them in the figure and selling them on the second-hand market.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. There's always somebody out to make a quick buck, isn't there? Yeah, good on you. I mean, in terms of the amount of people who must have bought the board game just for the figure, you've only got to look on eBay at the amount of board games that are up for sale without the figure. A hole where the figure should be in that window on the front of the box. There are dozens and dozens available, and they're going for stupid prices, really, really cheap, because nobody wants them.
Where it started to go wrong for me were the prototype editions. So I believe the first one was Darth Vader. And I think, when Darth Vader came out, I initially looked at it and I thought, well, it's interesting, but I wasn't too sure what it was trying to be. I thought the colours were awful. I just wasn't impressed. And then when I started to see collectors sell, Darth Vader with Rey red head and a Rey blue left leg, that's when I started to think, whoa, this is just getting crazy now. And collectors were creating markets and trying to make money from something that really didn't exist. I mean, who's to know how many combinations of these Vaders are? Who's to know which ones are more rare than others? And, we both know through, boil and pop methods and things like that, these things can be swapped around. So what were your thoughts when you first saw that Darth Vader prototype?
Being honest, really didn't like it. Don't like the colours. I mean, they say it's a prototype, but I don't think vintage figures ever came like that. Sure, you get some combinations of different colours. The sort of rainbow figures where every limb and the head and the body are completely different colours. I don't think that ever came up in the vintage line as genuine prototypes. Where that idea came from, goodness knows. Certainly some people liked it. Again, they were popular. We're collectors. We like our variants. Got to collect them all. So, saw people buying multiple copies of these and, as you say, trying to get every combination or trying to get figures so that they could boil and pop and have a Vader that was entirely red or entirely purple or what have you. Each to their own. If that what floats your boat, then that's fine by me. But no, don't understand it myself.
Now, obviously, it must have worked. It must have been popular because, we've got Boba Fett, we've got Chewbacca, we've got Stormtrooper. So we did get others in the line. But what do you think about the 6 that they've released? And so, for me, Darth Vader, pretty much no-brainer. Boba Fett, anything Fett makes money, except the Book of Boba Fett. Chewbacca, probable. Stormtrooper, yeah, obvious. But the other 2?
Yeah, I mean, Luke Snowspeeder, that was the follow-up to Tarkin, wasn't it? They had Luke in his cold weather gear, his pilot suit. Again, very good figure to release, although I'm sure they could have found better options. It's not that dissimilar to the Luke X-Wing pilot. But for a prototype figure, not sure about that. And the Mandalorian, in that sort of colour scheme, where you haven't got the Beskar armour and what have you, too similar to Boba Fett, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't work for me at all. I think, obviously, Mandalorian's very popular, and it came out at the wave of the Mandalorian, or heading towards a decline of Season 3. But, yeah, I didn't think that was a great choice, that one. You would have thought, I don't know, maybe Yoda, or some other character like that, or perhaps the Emperor.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose they're trying different things, aren't they? Seeing what works and what doesn't, what people will buy. Interesting that there haven't been any prototype figures in the last few years, have there? They did those 2, those 6 that you mentioned, and it's not really been followed up. We only had the one from Empire Strikes Back. We only had the one from Mandalorian. We had the Luke Skywalker, which was an unreleased figure, but nothing from Jedi or nothing from the other more modern lines, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett, etc. So, perhaps those prototype figures have run their course.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, obviously, if you look at the New Hope figures that came out, the only one that we got, really, that differs from anything that was in that line was the Tarkin. Was there anything that you think, collectors really were disappointed with? Why couldn't we have got, I don't know, I'm going to throw something out there from New Hope, the Rebel Fleet Bar?
Yes, Rebel Fleet Trooper. The rebels that were on the Tantive 4 at the start of the movie, Princess Leia's guards. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an absolute no-brainer, Rich. I really don't understand why that hasn't come out as a retro figure. Not only because it's the one that the fans all want, but it's an army builder. So you don't just buy one, you buy half a dozen. They would sell those by the shed load, I'm sure they would. And there's others. I mentioned before, and the likes of Biggs, Wedge, Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, more of the Cantina creatures. You can very easily reel off a list of, 10, 20, 30 figures. Those are the ones that I would be really, really keen on buying as a true extension to the vintage line. Your Book of Boba Fett figures and your Mandalorian figures and so on, they don't really do it for me in the same way as these vintage figures, which are from the trilogy that I grew up and loved as a kid. And, if I'm buying figures from these new series, I don't necessarily want to be buying vintage style. I'd prefer to buy the more modern figures, vintage collection, etc. The ones where you've got a decent sculpt and more articulation and so on. It's if you're going to do vintage figures, then have it from the original trilogy, the original 3 movies, so that it's a natural progression from those original 96 figures that we all know and love.
Yeah, I totally agree. You don't want a 5-point articulation figure for anything that's modern. And equally, I don't want one of these, 15, 17, 21 points of articulation. I don't want ankle joints and things like that. But 5 points of articulation for anything that's from the original trilogy, I think is absolutely spot on.
Can't agree more.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
And then, obviously, the Empire Strikes Back line. So they seem to hit very similar to what Kenner did with your typical, your bounty hunter line, your Han Hoth, your Lando, your Yoda, everything that you probably typically would expect. But they didn't release too many of those. They seem to have stopped that line. So anything that's fairly obviously missing for you, one I would throw out, I think, was Imperial Hoth Stormtrooper.
Yeah, we had 6 initially, didn't we? We had Boba Fett, Han Hoth, Lando Calrissian, Leia Hoth, Luke Bespin, and Yoda. And then we've already talked about the Luke Snowspeeder that came out with the Hoth game. Good selection of figures. They've gone for the popular ones again. I suppose if you're picking 6, you've got the 4 main heroic characters. You've got Han, Luke, Lando, Leia. You've then got Fett and Yoda. But yeah, why not release some of the other popular figures from that line? Snowtrooper's got to be an obvious one. The Rebel Soldier, again, an army builder figure. Who else have you got? More of them? Oh, they did do more bounty hunters, actually, didn't they? I was going to say more bounty hunters, but we had some of those in the 2-packs. IG-88 and Dengar came out later as a 2-pack. 4-Lom and Zuckuss, and then Boba Fett again with Bosk. So those are always popular, the bounty hunters, and yes, we did get all of those. And
we didn't get a lot for the Return of Jedi line, so some of my favourite figures, the Biker Scout, the Emperor's Royal Guard, the Gamorrean Guard, were all included. But there was only one, really, that we thought, yep, you're back on track again.
Mon Mothma.
Mm-hmm.
Unreleased figure, again, one of those that would definitely be on everybody's list as to a figure that you would have wanted back in the day. What did they do? They put her in a 6-pack so that you had to buy all 6 at what was quite an inflated price anyway. And nowadays, you can't get them for love nor money. I didn't buy the 6-pack. I wanted them on Mothma. I thought I'll buy it later. I'll get it as an individual figure. People have got to be breaking these 6-packs apart and selling figures individually. But no, haven't been able to get one. Missed them. And, the prices that they're going for now, I see them at £150, £200 a pop. Absolutely ridiculous asking prices. Realistically, I think on eBay, if they start low, then they'll go for under £100. But even so, spending that on a modern figure, nah.
I agree. And then, unfortunately for me, Hasbro released Yak Face, which I think it wasn't a figure that anybody particularly wanted. It was clearly a nod towards the fact that Yak Face is incredibly expensive and tough to get on the vintage line, certainly on a card, not released in the States originally. What are your thoughts about the fact that they released Yak Face and went down that line?
Yeah, Yak Face is that figure that's got a bit of a mythology about him, hasn't he? Because he wasn't released in the States. As figures go, he's actually more common than a lot of the others. To get a decent condition R2-D2 pop-up saber, for example, is much harder than finding a good Yak Face. But he's got that cachet, that bit of mystery about him. So an obvious figure to choose from that perspective. And you know what? I don't mind them doing that with Yak Face or with some of the other last 17, some of the other more expensive, more sought-after figures from the vintage line, because it gives somebody an option to buy those at a realistic price and not to pay money to the repro merchants, people who will knock out these figures with the 1985 copyright dates, try and get them as close to the original vintage as they possibly can. They then get sold on the secondary market as genuine. They con people. So that I think is a really bad part of the hobby. So if you can get a yak face with a, what would it be, 2022, 23 copyright date, whenever it was, a modern figure, and that satisfies you for your collection, fantastic. Bring it on. Let's have more like that.
Sticking with movies then, I was really pleased personally that they went back to the prequel trilogy, because I think for too long Hasbro and Disney have kind of not ignored it and swept it aside, but they've only really done a few nods towards it, so I'm really pleased that they released any of them.
They have, and this has come late on, hasn't it? Because we had some of the TV series first, which we'll come on to. But yeah, prequel trilogy, we had a set of 6. You've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, you've got Qui-Gon Jinn, Queen Amidala, Darth Maul, everyone's favourite Jar Jar Binks, and a battle droid. Done in that 5 points of articulation, vintage style. We all bought the figures when they first came out, didn't we, in 1999? I've got to say, I think I prefer the ones that kind of released then to these in the sort of vintage style. Again, I don't think, as toy collecting has gone and as toy production has gone, quality obviously has improved in terms of sculpts and articulation and so on. I don't really see a need to go back to vintage style figures for these, but they're nice enough.
One obvious character I'm missing, though, from the Phantom Menace line, though, isn't there?
Is there? Oh, you've stumped me there now. Who are we thinking about there?
The main hero.
Anakin.
Yes.
Indeed. Little Annie, you're right.
A little surprised, but, I did like the fact that they've actually, remembered those figures, and not really a cash grab, is it, because not many collectors were hammering for them. I was pleased they did it. I liked them.
Yeah, and if you do go for these retro figures and you're after a full set, then it's nice to have some from every movie. You got some from the other prequels, TV series. Nothing from the sequel trilogy yet. I wonder if they're going to go there in future.
Yeah, who knows? And obviously we've got lesser or fewer of the, the Attack of the Clones, but perhaps there's more waves coming out of those because they've only released 3 of each.
Yeah, could be. So Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith came boxed together in one multi-pack, 3 figures from each. So we've got Mace Windu, Jango Fett, and Padme Amidala in her white outfit from Attack of the Clones. And then Revenge of the Sith, we've got Anakin Skywalker, we've got General Grievous, and a clone trooper. And
the TV lines that you mentioned, now I'm going to have to say first of all, do you think somebody at Hasbro is absolutely furious with the Acolyte news?
Yeah, these haven't hit the shelves yet, have they? They were announced. Whether we will ever see them, I don't know. Do you reckon they'll make it to the market?
I think they will. I do. It'll be quite an admission of Disney to say that it's an absolute failure if they've got figures that they will not release.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened before, though, hasn't it? They've had, lines cancelled, and, we know from vintage days, there were figures that they got as far as sculpting, they got as far as packaging design for some of the Return of the Jedi figures, the droids and Ewoks line. So it wouldn't be the first time that it's got as far as having figures made up and packaging made up and then a line getting pulled. But, again, as figures go, these are quite nice, aren't they?
They are.
On the package design, you've got one of the witches, Mother somebody, 2 young Jedi, the guy and the girl. You've got Osha and May. And then you've got the lead Jedi, the Korean actor. Again, can't remember his character name. Interestingly, very interestingly, again, a very big omission. You haven't got the bad guy. You haven't got Darth Teeth, they called him, didn't they? Again, forget his character name, but why isn't he in there? Surely you need a bad guy in amongst your goodies.
Absolutely, you would think so. And if we just go back to the games, and so obviously we mentioned Tarkin came in the board game and Luke X-Wing came in the board game. The one that always puzzled me was Monopoly with the Stormtrooper. Was there really a need for that one?
Yeah, this was Mandalorian packaging, wasn't it? Mandalorian version of Monopoly, which came packaged with a remnant Stormtrooper, which was basically the regular Stormtrooper repackaged and given a bit of a dirty paint finish.
I just thought that by that point they may have taken some of the criticism of the Tarkin and probably not bothered releasing the Stormtrooper the Monopoly. I can't imagine it being popular, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, again, I think a lot of people wanted the figure and didn't want the board game. See quite a few of those popping up, but I think did it get a separate release with the other Mandalorian figures? Or was it just an exclusive with the board game? I think it was just an exclusive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But because it's effectively a repaint of the Stormtrooper, it's not one that's probably high on people's wanted list. So, I would imagine one that's passed a lot of collectors by.
Now, what do you think of the fact that they've released 103 figures, which I think is amazing? That is quite impressive, considering the original line had, depending on how many you want to count. Where do you stop counting with the original line?
Yeah, it's
97? 103?
Well, everyone says 96, don't they? But then you've got the band, which aren't included with that number, and then you've got the variants, the blue snag and the vinyl Cape Jawa and so on. You can go on, can't you, depending on how many variants you go for. I think probably 96 plus the band, so probably it's 99 figures in total, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So 103 released, which I think is really impressive in this day and age, the fact they've got so many out so fast. But 54 of these were exclusives. So what are your thoughts about these exclusives and as a collector trying to hunt things down?
They're not making it easy, are they?
No.
Why have these as limited editions? Okay, it creates a bit of interest. It gets fans talking about them. You get people trying to hunt them down. But, once you've done that, why not put them out on the open market, sell them individually? For Hasbro, I think they'd make an awful lot more money. They'd satisfy a lot of collectors. Why do they need to be exclusive? Sell them early through some of these stores or as board game inserts.
I don't get it myself. It's as if they're trying to control a market that doesn't need controlled. Like we said before about Amidala, in the 6-packs. So if these are going for £150, £200 now, that's of no benefit whatsoever to Hasbro, because surely the ones that made would have sold anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Duncan Poe, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
If they came out now and said, right, Mon Mothma, we're putting it out as an individual figure priced at £10 or £12, they'd sell a stack of those.
So why do I think they've left the sequel trilogy completely alone?
I would guess they have seen the backlash from fans, the fact that the sequel trilogy is not universally loved. I think they have purposefully distanced themselves from the sequel trilogy since the Rise of Skywalker came out. I think they have been focusing very, very much on television rather than movies. Whether there will be a wave of nostalgia for the sequel trilogy in the same way that perhaps there's been for the prequels, I don't know. I would guess possibly not in the same way. But perhaps they're waiting on that, see whether there's a resurgence of interest. Heard very, very little about the sequel trilogy, haven't we, since the hype over Rise of Skywalker finished?
I don't know, it's like what you said before, these are not aimed at children at all. I mean, although I do enjoy the sequel trilogy and I will watch them time to time, my heart and my passion isn't in that either. I'm much more interested in the original trilogy era and to a lesser extent the prequels. You can get away with the Disney TV series and perhaps children are buying these for the Disney TV series, who are watching a bit of Obi-Wan or watching a bit of Acolyte. Maybe some of those are aimed at those. Whereas, I'm going to give you an example from my work situation. So at the end of last term, the kids had a fun day. And some of the children, to fill a bit of time, we put them in the main hall and we put a movie on. And they had a choice of various movies, and it didn't matter what we put on. After about 10 minutes, they were bored, and the behaviour was very poor. And when we had the debrief, we thought about, children of that age, they don't watch movies anymore. Everything's about disposable content, So the children watch new Star Wars movies? Probably not. I can't see too many children aged 9, 10, 11 going to a movie now and watching a 2-hour movie. I mean, you've got younger children. Do they?
Yeah, mine are 14 and 15. They'll go to the cinema and watch a movie if it's one they're interested in. But if we're putting a movie on the telly and say, this is really good, come sit down and watch this, they might watch it for 10 minutes, maybe half an hour, and then they get bored. And they'll go off and go on their phones or do something else. The attention span has completely dropped
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think most kids these days will sit through a movie unless it's something that really, really interests them.
Yeah, whereas when my kids were younger, say a 7, 9-year-old, they may watch a 25-minute Disney, I don't know, Sabrina or something, Jessie or something equally terrible. And then towards Christmas, they may go, oh yeah, I would like a figure of those. Perhaps that's the thinking behind some of the TV show releases.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. It's the flavour of the month, isn't it? So, get the product out, get it sold. I started buying them. I bought the Mandalorian first 2 sets. I bought the first set of the Book of Boba Fett. But after that, as more and more figures kept coming out, I'm thinking, I'm spending a lot of money on these ones. They're sitting in the packaging. I'm not really enjoying them. What's the point? So I've stopped buying these. If they come out with more from the original trilogy, then absolutely. And I will probably be buying 2, one to keep packaged and one to have loose.
Well, I sold all mine. And I sold them and made more than what I'd purchased them for, which was quite a surprise. I do see them from time to time still in Asda or other local supermarkets, and they are heavily discounted. You can probably pick them up for about £4 now. If you are lucky enough to... It tends to be the same ones. Lando, you see fairly frequently. I think you see Han, Hoth quite frequently as well. You sometimes see an original Luke Skywalker still buried in the clearance aisles when you walk around. Have you spotted any out in the wild at all once you've been doing your grocery shopping or anything?
Not recently, I have to say, no. But yeah, you're right. They did sit on the store shelves for a long time. There were peg warmers, just the same as there are with any toy line. But yeah, I don't think they have been taken up quite as well as perhaps Hasbro might have thought. I'm sure when the original figures came out, and those original Star Wars ones, they were aimed, as I said, not at collectors, but at the casual fan, somebody who is walking through Tesco's or walking through Marks and Spencer and sees them on a shelf and thinks, oh, blimey, that hits the old nostalgia button. I had those when I was a kid. I'll pick one of those up, and then I'll pick another one up. I'm sure that's what it was aimed at, but these modern ones are not going to have that appeal, are they?
No, and certainly the casual fans certainly not going to collect 103 action figures and go for the 54 exclusives. And that's what killed it for me. It was Mon Mothma. I thought, you know what, I don't particularly want to buy a box of 6, and if they had sold them as 6 separate card backs, I probably would have bought them, which it might sound odd, but a box of 6 didn't fit. It doesn't fit in with anything that I was having at the time. I didn't want to have it, and I just wanted the normal regular releases.
Yeah, agreed. And I remember thinking it was a lot to shell out for a box of 6, and yes, you could sell the others on, but that's a pain in the what's it. Had Mon Mothma been available as an individual figure, then absolutely, probably would, as I said, probably would have bought 2.
Well, then to end this episode then, Andy, if Hasbro were going to release 5 for Christmas, what would you be hoping for?
Right. Rebel Fleet Trooper, Big Starklighter. Who else? They did quite well in the Jedi line, didn't they? They didn't miss many characters from Jedi. Han Stormtrooper, that's another one, definitely. Sand Trooper. And who else? Who else didn't we get? Maybe an Endor Rebel variant.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a different character to put with your Rebel troops.
Well, for me, I think I'd agree with the Rebel Fleet Trooper. I think that's an obvious one. I would go with the TIE Fighter pilot and the AT-AT driver. I just
as re-releases.
Yes, I just like any figures that bad guys wearing helmets. I think are absolutely brilliant. I think they're wonderful. I think I'd have to say R5D4 just purely because that was my Focus character, and I do have a lot of nostalgia for that one. I don't know. I think I'd like to see, I don't know, maybe it's a Garindin or something like that. I think that would have been a good one to come out.
Yeah, that'd go down well.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think it came out at the right time. I do. I think they chose the right time. They released the right figures. They released everything in the right way. But I think sadly, like with most of the things Star Wars and modern, it started to lose its way. And personally, it wouldn't surprise me if it's going to start to wrap up that line now and perhaps go back to focusing on Black Series.
Yeah, wouldn't be at all surprised, but again, without wanting to labour the point, they're missing a huge market by not releasing some of those original trilogy figures. Someone at Hasbro wants their heads banging together. It's such an obvious opportunity.
Yes, that's been said multiple times. Well, Andy, it's been another great episode, a nice light touch going through the retro collection. Hopefully some of our listeners, are looking at their collections and thinking, perhaps, I've got some ideas, some figures I'd like to see, and would love for you to contact Fantha Tracks and give us your ideas of what retro collecting figures we're missing. But for this episode, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. May the force be with you.
So thanks for listening to Collecting Tracks. If you want to be part of the action, stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Andy Lythe for our Collecting Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember to tune in to Good Morning Tatooine, live Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. Check out Fantha Tracks Radio Friday evenings at 7 p.m. UK time for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks and Cannon Fodder, and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.